Okay, in this video we're going to have a look at a cryptocurrency called Monero. Its ticker is XMR and it's a privacy-focused coin. So Monero, as I said, is a cryptocurrency. It's like Bitcoin in the broadest possible sense, but there's one key difference. With Monero, privacy isn't optional. It's built into the coin by default. Now, it launched in 2014 and has spent over a decade doing something very specific, making blockchain transactions difficult and, in practice, you might argue almost impossible to trace publicly. Now, unlike many crypto projects, you won't have seen any fancy marketing cycles. It hasn't pivoted into those NFTs and it hasn't tried to do everything to everyone. It stayed focused on one thing: financial privacy, and that's what Monero is all about. And whether you like that idea or not, it's quite fascinating technically. So, here's something that many people still misunderstand. Bitcoin is not anonymous. In fact, every single transaction is publicly visible on its blockchain. Wallet addresses aren't directly tied to your name or location or anything like that, of course, but once they are linked, your full transaction history of that wallet can technically be analyzed. So companies are out there who specialize in doing exactly that. So Monero asks a different question. What if digital cash worked more like physical cash? When you hand somebody a $20 or £20 note, the whole world doesn't get a permanent ledger entry like it does with Bitcoin. Now, Monero's design is an attempt to recreate that privacy, but digitally. So, how does Monero work? Well, this is where it gets clever, but we're keeping this simple. This is not a super in-depth video. I will go into some more depth if this video is popular, but let's keep it simple at the moment. Monero combines three main technologies. First, there are ring signatures. Now, your transaction is mixed with others. Observers can see a transaction happened, but not definitively which wallet initiated it. Second, stealth addresses. Now, each payment generates a one-time address. So even if somebody knows your public address, they can't see incoming payments. Third, confidential transactions. The amount sent is completely hidden. So unlike Bitcoin, where you can see sender, receiver, and amount, Monero obscure all of these three variables. It's not just harder to trace, it's structurally designed not to expose this transaction metadata. So, why is Monero controversial? And this is where the conversation becomes a little bit more political, really. Now, privacy tools don't discriminate between good and bad users. Journalists, activists, people under authoritarian regimes, they value private financial tools as they do with other tools. So, in fact, though, do ransomware groups, hackers, and dark market operators. And that dual-use nature makes regulators uncomfortable, and it has sometimes affected Monero's price, really. So over the past few years, many centralized exchanges have actually delisted Monero, citing compliance and AML, anti-money laundering concerns. So this tension isn't new. Governments want traceability, but privacy coins like Monero resist traceability. So there's that friction, and that I don't think is ever going to change, really. So let's just take a UK context, really. So in the UK specifically, there's no outright ban on Monero. It's perfectly legal, but exchanges that operate under FCA registration requirements face these strict anti-money laundering obligations. And that includes something called the travel rule, which requires identifying information to accompany certain crypto transfers between regulated entities. Now, here's the problem here. Monero's design makes that extremely difficult for any exchange to implement in the traditional way. So rather than ban it outright, many platforms simply have delisted it to avoid any sort of broader compliance risks. So that's an important distinction, really, and it's commercial risk management and not necessarily a statutory prohibition. It just means the exchange think it's not really worth the problem and the issues that XMR could cause it. So, is Monero truly untraceable? Now, of course, we need to be cautious with any of this absolutist language because things are rarely that straightforward. Now, Monero is very, very privacy focused, but nothing digital is sort of magically invisible. Blockchain analysis firms continue researching sort of statistical weaknesses in all the privacy coins. There are also network level considerations. For example, IP address exposure. If somebody doesn't use something like a VPN or additional privacy tools to access things like exchange, decentralized or centralized, really. So it's better described as high friction to trace. It's designed to resist specifically blockchain analysis, but it's not supernatural. It's not hidden from sight. And there are other ways of tracing transactions on a network level as well. So this nuance matters really when you're considering it. It's highly private, but not, perhaps, perfectly private. So one of Monero's strongest arguments is fungibility. So all XMR units are equal. In Bitcoin, coins can become tainted by prior history. There are some wallets, of course, that have quite a history as well. So some exchanges reject coins linked to any illicit activity. With Monero, because transaction history isn't publicly visible, one coin is completely indistinguishable from another. So theoretically a bit like cash. So from a financial theory perspective, that is really much closer to how traditional money works. But this really also limits institutional comfort, really. Large funds, ETFs, regulated custodians, they have to operate, and they do operate, within lots of reporting frameworks, and Monero doesn't really fit into that world. So there are genuine risks here. Lots of, if you're thinking of investing in Monero, further regulatory tightening could reduce liquidity. And if more exchanges delist, on-ramps become harder. Their cryptographic assumptions may evolve as well. And politically, privacy coins are often mentioned in enforcement discussions. Now, I've seen Monero plummet in the past through regulation sort of announcements and different discussions, but then again recently it's performed quite well until the obvious weakness, macro sort of weaknesses in the market. Then Monero's held up quite strongly, even though it's still fallen as well. So it's worth considering these aspects, really. And anyway, this is definitely not investment advice. We're trying to understand the mechanics behind the headline, really. So if you're watching this space analytically, here's the sort of thing that matters. EU MiCA enforcement is interacting with privacy coins. Whether the UK exchanges will tighten their policy and restrict Monero access, and whether cryptographic research reveals structural weaknesses in Monero or reinforces how private it is, really. So it's kind of less about price, really, more about infrastructure and politics, really. And that's probably where Monero's price will be affected. So, key takeaways really can be summarized here. So it's a privacy by default. Monero is the privacy coin, the biggest. There are others, but this one's the high flyer, if you like. There is some problem with compliance. It's incompatible because regulators want to trace transactions, and the whole point of Monero is you can't. It's not completely untraceable, but it's kind of pretty close. So you'd have to consider how that changes and any risks that come up to that. It's worth watching the horizon on this and see how the mood changes with coins like this. Okay, well, thanks for watching. That's the end of my little Monero overview. I hope it's helped somebody explain this fascinating coin and one I quite like the look of. Okay, thanks for watching and see you in the next video. Bye for now.